You stub your toe in the dark and you swear. You hear a song you haven't thought about in years, and something in your chest tightens. You watch someone cry at a funeral, and your eyes go before you even decide to let them. Nobody taught you to do any of that. So here is the question nobody stops to ask. When ancient humans, 200,000 years ago, sat around a fire with no language as we know it, no words for love or grief or loneliness, did they feel any of those things? Or did emotion, the real interior weight of being alive, come later, layered on top of survival like paint on a wall? The answer is not what the textbooks assumed, and it changes something about who you think you are. For most of the 20th century, the working assumption in anthropology and psychology was roughly this: emotion as we experience it is a product of civilization. Complex feeling required complex language. You couldn't grieve properly without a word for grief. You couldn't feel shame without a social structure sophisticated enough to produce it. The brain of early Homo sapiens was solving immediate problems: food, predators, shelter. The interior life we take for granted was a later development, a bonus feature added by culture somewhere along the way. It was a clean theory. It was also wrong. If you're enjoying this so far, hit the like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I actually read them. The first serious crack in that theory came not from a psychologist, but from an archaeologist working in the Shanidar cave in northern Iraq in the 1960s. Ralph Selecki was excavating a Neanderthal burial site, 60,000 years old, when pollen analysis of the soil revealed something that stopped the field cold. The body had been buried with flowers, hyacinths, groundsel, grape hyacinth, arranged in clusters. Someone had gone out, gathered those flowers, brought them back, and placed them around the dead. Selecki called it the first flower burial in human history. The scientific community spent decades arguing about whether the pollen got there accidentally through animal burrowing or wind. But the argument itself reveals the problem. The possibility that a being 60,000 years ago might want to make a grave beautiful was so uncomfortable that researchers spent years trying to rule it out. Because if that gesture was real, something we have no word for had to have driven it. A feeling that the person in the ground still mattered, that the moment of leaving deserved something more than silence. That same site produced something else. A skeleton with a withered arm, a missing hand, blind in one eye. Survived for years past the point where those injuries occurred. Someone fed that man. Someone brought food to a person who could not hunt, could not gather, could not protect the group. That is not efficiency. That is something else. And whatever that something else was, it had to be felt before it could be acted on. The question evolutionary psychology spent decades wrestling with was how far back the emotional architecture actually goes. The answer, when the neuroscience arrived, was further than anyone wanted to admit. Antonio Damasio, a neurologist at the University of Southern California, spent years studying patients with damage to the limbic system, the brain's oldest emotional processing region. What he found was this: without emotion, humans cannot make decisions. Not complicated decisions, any decisions. Patients with limbic damage could recite the logical pros and cons of a choice perfectly and then be unable to choose between two appointments. The rational brain, the newer part, the part we credit with civilization, cannot function without the emotional brain underneath it. Emotion is not decoration on top of cognition. Emotion is the engine. And that limbic system, the one doing all that work, is not a modern structure. It predates us by millions of years. The amygdala, which processes fear and threat, is present in fish. The structures that generate social bonding, separation distress, play behavior, are present in every mammal alive. When a rat's pup is removed from its mother, the mother's brain registers the separation the same way a human brain registers grief. The chemistry is identical. The same neurochemicals, the same brain regions, the same behavioral response. Jaak Panksepp, a neuroscientist who spent his career mapping what he called the primary emotional systems, identified 7 core emotional states shared across all mammals: seeking, rage, fear, lust, care, panic, and play. None of them require language. None of them require culture. They are written into the hardware at a level far older than anything we built on top of them. If this is making you think, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. This channel only exists because of the people who share these videos, and I don't take that lightly. So ancient humans sitting around a fire 200,000 years ago were not blank. They were running the same emotional operating system you are running right now. What changed was not the feeling. What changed was what they did with it. The evidence for that shows up in burial practices that stretch across every continent and every era of human prehistory. 78,000 years ago, in Panga ya Saidi on the coast of Kenya, a child was buried in a deliberate grave. The body had been carefully arranged, the head resting in a specific position, the limbs placed with attention. Researchers named the child Mtoto, Swahili for child. Someone had carried this child to a specific place, dug into the earth, and laid them down carefully. That is not efficiency. There is no survival benefit to burying a dead child with care. Something had to be felt to produce that act. Something that said, this matters, this person mattered, the moment of leaving deserves more than being walked away from. What is striking, when you look at the full sweep of the archaeological record, is how consistent the emotional response to death has been across 200,000 years. Different cultures, different continents, different eras. Almost all of them arriving at the same gesture. The body is placed with deliberate care. The grave is sometimes marked, sometimes accompanied by objects. The specific objects change. The impulse does not. That consistency is not random. It is the signature of something happening inside the people doing the burying, something felt. The harder question is whether ancient humans felt the subtler things. Not grief, which leaves physical evidence in how the dead are treated, but loneliness, embarrassment, the particular weight of being misunderstood. Robin Dunbar, the anthropologist who established that human social groups naturally cap at around 150 people, argues that the social brain hypothesis tells us something important here. The reason the human brain expanded so dramatically over the last 2 million years was not to solve physics problems. It was to manage the complexity of social relationships. A brain that size, burning that much energy, tracking that many individuals, inferring their intentions, modeling their emotional states, is a brain that is deeply invested in other people. And a brain deeply invested in other people can be hurt by them, can miss them, can want their approval. The neural infrastructure for social pain, the feeling of rejection or exclusion, activates the same regions as physical pain. It is not a metaphor. Being left out hurts in the same place being burned hurts. That architecture is old. It did not arrive with civilization. Civilization arrived because it was already there. 200,000 years ago, a person sat by a fire and watched someone they cared about stop breathing. They felt something. We don't know what word they would have given it, or whether they had words at all. But the feeling was there, working through them, driving the hands that arranged the body, gathered the flowers, dug into the earth. The same feeling that sends you searching for the right words at a funeral you didn't want to attend. The same feeling that makes you buy flowers for no reason except that it seems right. You inherited that from people who had it long before they had language to describe it. The feeling came first. Everything else came after. Thank you for watching until the end. If this changed how you see something, check out the videos on screen. I think they will hit the same way. And subscribe if you haven't. See you in the next one.